After the release of Hellboy this week, there are two people who are going to be rolling over laughing all the way home, and that is Guillermo Del Toro and Ron Perlman. My thoughts on Hellboy, coming up. What is up, everyone, and welcome to Men vs. Movies. I'm Griffin, as always, and if this is your first time checking out one of our videos, consider hitting that subscribe button where we take on the best and worst of cinema on a weekly basis. And apologies first and foremost for the lack of content in videos as of late. I have been traveling an absurd amount, and I was recently just at a wedding over the weekend, so that's why you didn't see a review for Shazam. I still haven't even seen the film, but hopefully within the coming weeks we're going to get back on track. So now let's get into this review. 2019's Hellboy is directed by Neil Marshall, and it stars, I was about to say Ron Perlman. Fuck, I wish it starred Ron Perlman. David Harbour, Milla Jovovich, Sasha Lane, Daniel Day Kim, and Ian McShane. Simply explaining the plot of Hellboy is quite the undertaking, as I'm sure you'll realize after watching this review. But Hellboy, of course, is a half-demon, and he is tasked with tracking down and exterminating these monsters. Working alongside a team of humans led by his adopted father, Professor Broom, Hellboy finds himself caught between the humans who seek to destroy him out of fear and hellish imps that threaten his world. Matters, of course, only get worse when the evil sorceress, the Blood Queen, is resurrected, seeking to wipe out all humanity as we know it. As I alluded to at the beginning of this video, with the Oscar-winning director Guillermo Del Toro's third Hellboy film scrapped in lieu of a reboot, Del Toro and the original Hellboy himself, Ron Perlman, will most likely be disheartened to find out that this obnoxiously loud and painfully dull edgelord Hellboy reboot is nothing more than a sad attempt to usher in Hellboy for a new era, and it just begs one question. Why? Director Neil Marshall's Hellboy is a juvenile mess and conveys more like a 13-year-old trying to be edgy with an R rating. It has poorly written Deadpool-inspired humor, though never coming close, an incoherent narrative with an over-reliance on exposition and gratuitous violence that amounts to a complete lack of understanding who exactly this film is for. One of the greatest attributes of the original two Hellboy movies was their ability to craft a visually stunning and original world that had a distinct identity, immersing viewers into Del Toro's fantasy. From the elaborate backdrops to the striking costumes to the fantastical creatures, every design was carefully conceived and detailed to perfection, giving those original films a unique style. When it comes to Hellboy 2019, the canvas is devoid of any real style or originality. Each piece is poorly composited against a green screen with plastic-looking CGI monsters that look as though they were pulled straight out of the world of Shrek. There's one creature in particular, this bizarre boar man that may as well have been TMNT's Bebop and Rocksteady, doubling as Rita Repulsa's henchman in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. And speaking of Rita Repulsa, Milla Jovovich's character, this maniacal cackling sorceress, Nimu the Blood Queen, I have no idea if I'm saying that right, was so outlandishly over the top that she could have given Elizabeth Banks in Power Rangers, who actually played Rita Repulsa, a run for her money. On top of that, Hellboy so desperately longs to be the satanical little brother to Thor Ragnarok. However, sparse action sequences fueled by motley crew simply don't add up. That being said, the two legitimate action sequences we are treated to are mildly amusing and actually impressively staged as one takes. However, due to very poor visual effects work, they come across as more laughable than exciting. Ultimately, this points to a much larger issue with the film, which is a tonal inconsistency driven by a directionless script, and worst of all, it's such a drag. Hellboy's storytelling is incredibly haphazard and doesn't ever point to a clear direction in which the story is going. The narrative just wanders around aimlessly, using long-winded exposition and an ungodly amount of flashbacks that consistently halt whatever momentum the film had going for it. The end result is an utterly uninteresting series of apocalyptic monologues that are enough to make your eyes glaze over, followed by the occasional obnoxious outburst from David Harbour.
Hey, I'm on your side!
There's absolutely no soul or texture to these characters. Another sad departure from the Del Toro films, offering up very little in the way of intimacy as we're given character profiles in the form of flashbacks. And this lack of development is especially frustrating in terms of Hellboy himself. Harbour's Hellboy has moments of charm, but can ultimately be whittled down to this angsty teen that pivots uncontrollably from mumble to tantrum in such overblown fashion. There is no middle ground here. It is either one extreme or the other. It quickly became irritable, and it pains me to say this because I am quite a fan of David Harbour's work, and I still find him to be a great talent. But perhaps this inconsistent characterization of Hellboy functions to parallel the inconsistent tone of the film itself. Hellboy tries so bloody hard to abuse its R rating to the fullest, and I do not mean that as a compliment in the slightest. As opposed to films like Deadpool and Logan that really showcase the necessity in an R rating, Hellboy unleashes an utterly unnecessary amount of demonic violence in which countless civilians are decapitated, skewered, and ripped in half, all while delivering the most dim-witted dialogue in an attempt at humor. The needless bloodshed numbs the senses, and after the N-teenth F-bomb, it's really hard to believe that anyone over the age of 13 was an accredited writer on this film. And therein lies the true problem with Hellboy. It is a big, dumb PG-13 movie that is trying so hard to squeeze itself into the body of an R-rated film. Before I give you my final verdict on Hellboy, guys, why don't you take a second here and like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to this channel for more movie reviews and movie-related content on a weekly basis. The filmmakers behind Hellboy were so preoccupied with trying to distance themselves from the Guillermo Del Toro films that they forgot the most important thing: make a good movie. This harder metal 2019 reboot is the equivalent of Michael Bay handling a CW show, and even that sounds more interesting than what we got. Admittedly, there were a couple creatively staged action sequences, and David Harbour has 3 good moments, but ultimately, oh man. But the begrudging pace, incoherent narrative, try-hard mentality, and lack of any sort of distinct vision create an even deeper longing for that third Del Toro film. In the end, this colossal mess of a movie truly emphasizes the boy in Hellboy. And so, for all of those reasons, and the reasons I've mentioned throughout my review, I'm ultimately going to be giving Hellboy KO. And now I want to hear from you all. I want to know what your favorite Hellboy film is, I guess, because now there's 3 of them. And if you've seen the most recent Hellboy, let me know down in the comments section below. As always, guys, you can like Men vs. Movies on Facebook, follow us on Twitter simply by searching Men vs. Movies. And lastly, if you like me specifically and you like what I have to say, you can always give me a follow on Twitter at Griff Schiller. All right. This was a doozy, but I'm glad we got through it. And until next time, take care.